Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just jump right in. Picture your company's core software infrastructure for a second. If it was built, say, a decade or two ago, it's probably starting to feel a bit like a historic, slightly creaky old house. It holds a ton of value, it has great bones, but adding modern smart home features or expanding its footprint, that feels practically impossible without risking the whole structure just collapsing. Well, today, we're exploring the concept of legacy software modernization, and specifically, we're breaking down the blueprint used by Sparkout Tech. We're going to treat this exactly like a high-stakes commercial house renovation, figuring out how you can gut the outdated stuff, install state-of-the-art tech, and do it all while you are literally still living inside. We've got a packed agenda today. We'll quickly cover the legacy system dilemma, dive into some digital transformation strategies, walk through the actual modernization process, talk about choosing the right partner, and wrap it all up with an amazing success story in agriculture. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the Legacy System Dilemma. Let's be totally blunt here. You just can't reach new business heights using outdated strategies. It doesn't work. Legacy systems act exactly like a cracked foundation. They severely limit your agility. When the market shifts, and honestly, it shifts faster today than ever before, outdated tech fundamentally prevents you from pivoting to meet those changing requirements. It is not just an annoying headache for your IT department, it literally blocks your overall business growth. Okay, so knowing you have a problem is the easy part, right? Fixing it, that's where the anxiety kicks in. This brings up the ultimate sleep-depriving question for any CTO. How on earth do you completely renovate your IT infrastructure while still keeping the business running? You obviously can't just pause your operations, lock the doors for 6 months, and say to your customers, hey, pardon our guest. And this is exactly where we see the contrast between the old way and the new way. Instead of relying on these massive, super intertwined monolithic systems, where upgrading one tiny piece risks breaking the entire system, Sparkout shifts you over to microservices. They break the system down into small, highly manageable, explicit parts. Then they couple this with what they call all-in-all automation and continuous monitoring. Basically, this means they can rigorously test absolutely every change as it happens, and that is exactly how you avoid operational downtime and finally move away from systems built on assumed design.
Moving right along to Section 2, Digital Transformation Strategies.
So the really crucial point to grasp here is that modernization isn't just about rewriting your code. It's about totally changing how that code lives and breathes. Take app containerization, for example. This strategy involves packaging an application and all its necessary dependencies into a single, neat little container. What this does is create a lightweight, completely isolated runtime environment. When you combine that with modern DevOps implementations, containerization gives you that secure, highly scalable framework you desperately need for your digital renovation. But listen, you definitely don't want to just containerize everything blindly on day one. That's a recipe for disaster. To minimize risk, Sparkout uses a highly strategic, phased approach. First up, they analyze and prioritize. They target the highest value apps with the least technical debt, so you actually see a fast return on investment. Then they start small in phases, just to build some stakeholder trust. From there, they shift monoliths to microservices. And finally, they implement everything as code automation to seriously optimize efficiency across all your teams. It's a very calculated step-by-step evolution.
Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts in Section 3, the modernization process.
You've actually got a whole menu of tactical options for this. You don't always need to tear the house down to the studs, right? Sometimes you just need refactoring, which is adapting the current code without changing its outside appearance. This is great for heavily optimizing end-user performance. Or maybe you need replatforming, which just shifts the app to a new runtime environment for faster upgrades. But if you really need to integrate advanced features, you might have to bite the bullet and choose recreating, where components are completely rebuilt from scratch while retaining their original business scope. Now, this is a seriously fascinating middle ground strategy, encapsulation. If a full rebuild is just too extreme or way too extensive for you right now, encapsulation acts as an elegant bridge. It establishes connections to new interfaces and accesses the underlying layers through an API, all while perfectly maintaining your original code and environment. Essentially, you get to play with fresh tech without risking breaking the original legacy logic. It's brilliant.
Which brings us to Section 4. Choosing the right partner.
Look, a renovation this massive requires immense trust. Yes, Sparkout has an incredibly deep tech stack. They do everything from front-end JavaScript frameworks to Python, AI, machine learning, and even blockchain. But honestly, Beyond the tech stack, what you really need is an essentially agile partner. You need seamless communication, no language barriers. You need a completely transparent process with periodic reports and full access to tools, so there are absolutely no loose ends. And most importantly, you need outright client control. You have to retain ultimate authority over your project, while your partner handles the heavy lifting from planning to maintenance. And finally, Section 5, a success story about transforming agriculture. Let's see this in action. The challenge here was a fundamentally broken 5.6 trillion, yes, with a T, dollar agricultural supply chain. To put that in perspective, that is literally larger than the GDP of most countries on Earth. A company called FarmScent partnered with SparkOut to solve this. And instead of just, doing a basic app update, they engineered a massive, highly disruptive Web3 ecosystem. The whole goal? Connect buyers directly to farmers and permanently eliminate all those inefficiencies and entrenched middlemen that were choking the legacy supply chain. And the results? Honestly, staggering. By leveraging modern tech to just dismantle those legacy intermediaries, this newly engineered platform successfully eliminated an incredible 90% of the middleman margin. 90% of those bloated costs just gone. So, where did all that saved money go? Straight to the source. That margin elimination directly fueled a massive 300% profit margin lift for the actual agricultural producers. By simply updating the technological infrastructure behind the transaction, the actual economic reality for those farmers was fundamentally transformed forever. And just to be super clear, this wasn't some tiny little pilot program testing the waters with a few people. This modernized, highly scalable infrastructure successfully onboarded over 200,000 verified farmers into the ecosystem. That is the true power of scaling with modern architecture. There's this fantastic quote from Yog Shrusti, the founder of FarmScent, that really hits the nail on the head for this whole explainer. He points out that the platform didn't just work, it dismantled the intermediaries and gave power back. It perfectly highlights why modernizing your software isn't simply an IT chore you do for the sake of having new toys. It is a fundamental business transformation that can completely redefine your standing in your industry. All right, wrapping things up, we really need to address the elephant in the room that stops so many leaders from making this leap. What if the developers who built your system left a decade ago and you have absolutely zero documentation? Well, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought. You can still do this. Experts can literally reverse engineer your current applications. They can identify the dependencies and uncover the business rules already coded in your app to build a brand new modernization roadmap right from scratch. The tools and the methodologies exist right now to safely rescue your data and your business logic. So, if a lack of documentation isn't a valid excuse anymore, and operational downtime can be totally avoided with automated testing, what is actually stopping you from beginning your modernization journey today?